I probably shouldn't be allowed to talk to my 2001 self before FD started because I would reveal too much. If anything, I would hope I would just I would hide a lot of the hard stuff and just say this is the right thing to do. Don't give up. Back in 1999, my dad at the time really wanted me to go to college.
We were in New Zealand. He was competing in the World Championships over there, and we went over to see him. And he had been accepted to college, so we thought, okay, after the Worlds, we're done with kayaking, and that's going to be it. And we were on a ferry from the North Island to the south.
And I told my father that I didn't want to go to college, and that didn't sit too well with him. And he asked what I would do instead if I wasn't going to go to college. And I said, well, I'm going to be a professional kayaker. And he also didn't think that was a good idea. And then I told him I was going to start a nonprofit, and he almost fell off the boat.
And we both thought, oh man, because we knew how many obstacles there were in front of him. But we didn't say anything because you never squash a dream.
Yeah, we both said the same thing when we weren't with Brad. We said, well, it's a great idea, but he'll go to college in 6 months because he'll never pull it off.
We were building the Whitewater Park, and we were interviewing a bunch of athletes, trying to find an athlete that could help us promote Vail as a younger destination for the summer. And we told Brad what we were trying to do, and he said, I'll move to Vail, but I need you to help me start something. And he told us about his vision for First Ascents, and we shook on the spot and said, we'll make it happen for you. Come to Vail, and the rest is history, I guess.
Before the first camp, I actually didn't know if it'd become anything. I didn't even know, A, if the first camp would ever happen, or B, if it did happen, if there would be any reason to do a second.
So that first camp,
We partnered with an organization in Montana, and they brought all the campers down to us. And the director of that organization's son was one of our campers. And she and I were sitting up on a bluff watching the campers come down the river. And ahead of them were some just play boaters out for the day. And she looked over at me with tears in her eyes, and she said, you've given them back their dignity. She said, down there on the water in those boats, they're just like everybody else.
You know, I think it was a great experience for the campers, but I think for all of us that were involved on the outside was just realizing how much of a difference you can make in the world. But it affected us all. I mean, it definitely was game-changing for anybody that was involved. It was pretty cool.
Oh man, the first 5 years were, it was a fire drill constantly. Obviously funding was a huge focus. Our first donation was a $50 donation from my neighbor, Sheila Bottomley. I'll never forget it.
For all of us, setting up a nonprofit was a first time. None of us knew what we were doing.
It was trial and error because no one really had any sort of nonprofit background. It was absolutely learn as we went.
You know, the whole first year, I kind of remember it as ham sandwiches and $100,000. Like, that was my mentality, is the board of directors literally were making ham and turkey sandwiches. And, you know, we also wanted to raise as much money as we can. And I remember just, you had to be all things at all moments. And we really didn't know what we were doing, to be honest.
It was Joel Heath, Joe Blair, and myself. And I believe we came in one day and it was flooded. And so, yeah, having to deal, you know, with the awesomeness of a sewer pipe flooding your office right off the bat.
It was a lot of $15 checks. You know, Nike's big contribution, and then a lot of $15 checks. And I think the board, most of us sold ourselves on dates in the early years, and Garfinkel's Bar.
Just this tiny little gem of a concept that everyone was really passionate about and fought for and worked hard for in the face of, you know, funny adversity, but adversity nonetheless. But I think throughout, the one thing that First Ascents, it's always amazed me, is just the tremendous passion people have for this concept and this organization. Those early years in that 5 to 7 year span, it was such a hands-on thing. I mean, everyone had to help and contribute and pitch in. I think that really lent itself to the passion that you see in First Descents now and people being involved for the 15 years that the organization has existed.
When I first started working with First Descents, they had a lot of organizational challenges. Since then, they seem to keep making the changes they need to make to get there. The organization has evolved, their personnel have evolved, and their vision for the future is really, really solid today. I think the sky's the limit now. It's just been an incredible transition from where they were then to where they are now.
I'm just so thankful for all the people in the beginning that came together to make FD what it is. You know, it is truly a culmination of, 10, 20,000 people.
We tried to be official from time to time as a board of directors, and I remember we were at the Antlers in Vail, and Brad threw out, "I want to do 1,000 campers." And I remember all of us literally just all sat back, 1,000? Come on, Brad, let's talk it down a little bit.
Never in my wildest dreams thought that we would get to that point. Now we're asking ourselves, like, how many people in the US could benefit from this, and how do we serve all of them? And that's like a really cool conversation to be having from 15 years ago, going like, what are we putting in the sandwiches, and who's gonna bring lunches, and how are we even gonna find 15 people, to now how can we serve every young adult with cancer that needs this experience every year?
First Descents was just part of my job when I started. I thought I was just getting into something that was going to be good for the town of Vail and a good thing to bring. But once FD gets in you, it doesn't go out.
When I first got involved with First Descents, I was absolutely blown away by the community that formed in the very, very short time that these people were together. And I was hooked. I thought, my God, this is so powerful.
You can't un-FD. You can't go back. Once you've come to a program, there is no going back, and I love that.